All right. Melissa, thank you for joining us this morning. You've already done a nice introduction on the first video, so I don't think it'll be necessary for you to go right back through your bio. But what I did think was very important for us to do is based on the video that you already have out there on Target Zero was just to have a conversation with you so our members can understand your story and understand a little bit more in depth about Target Zero. So, based on the information that is in that video, it's clear that you're very focused, you're very busy. You mentioned that you are the president of the National Coalition for Safer Roads. Can you talk a little bit about that organization, how it started, its mission and membership?
Absolutely. And first of all, thank you so much for having me today. I'm so grateful that we can talk about Target Zero and talk about how to drive down heartache on our roadways in Florida. So nationally, the National Coalition for Safer Roads, our mission is to connect and empower survivor advocates with the tools and resources needed to end road tragedy in their own communities. We want to end road violence around the country, and that's what we do through our work at the National Coalition for Safer Roads. My husband's death and my brother's diminished quality of life as a crash survivor, and my traffic safety advocacy efforts inspired the formation of NCSR. It's not something I started. It had already been started previously, but this group assembled to bring together policymakers, community leaders, um, concerned citizens to support life-saving technologies, advocating for their use in cities and in communities across the country. We have partners in several states, but in Florida, as an example, we partner with Alert Today Florida, we partner with MAD, we Space Coast TPO, we partner with FDOT's Target Zero initiative. And for an example, in Virginia, we partner with Drive Smart Virginia, America Walks, and the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. But if you go to ncsrsafety.org, you can see where where our partners are. And anyone can be a partner. There's not a membership involved, so anybody can come on and be our partners. And it's really about just collaborating and sharing so that we can work together. You know, some people can't do what I do, and I can't do what other people do. So around the country, if we partner with our organizations, we can collaborate so that we can help drive down this heartache on our roadways.
Good, and that's why we're here today.
Mhm.
What I found interesting from your presentation was not just the targeted behaviors that lead to dangerous driving, but the underlying precursors that cause the behavior. Can you talk about each of those and what strategies Target Zero is using to mitigate them?
Absolutely. So speeding, distraction, and aggression. Those are our three biggest in the state of Florida. So the Target Zero initiative has special messaging and campaigns to educate the motoring public on each of these dangerous driving behaviors and the precursors behind those behaviors. So the goal is to identify and address the precursors. Thus, the behavior change will follow, eliminating those serious injury and the fatal crashes. So those behaviors that I mentioned, aggressive driving, distracted driving, and speeding, and their precursors are stress management, multitasking, and time management, were identified through interviews, analysis of crash data, vehicle miles traveled, and road data to find trends, to find crash types, court information, and driver license database. The behaviors and attitudes of road users was assessed through surveys and through focus groups. Speeding, for example. Target Zero goes above the current law. So obey the speed limit. It's the law, right? That's what we're all supposed to do. It addresses the life challenges that creates the behavior, including speeding, which are management and stress management. We want to try to prevent rushing. The Target Zero initiative created a simple call to action. Leave early or arrive late. And it developed practical tools, calming playlist, do not disturb on your phone messages, and tip cards aim to manage that time and that stress that we have in our vehicles every day that people are utilizing and causing these crashes. Each behavior has a call to action and practical tools to implement. So stress management is aggressive. That's usually what it is. Embrace the space, keep the distance from the driver in front of you. There's great campaigns for that. Multitasking, distracted driving, drive time is your time. Ride with do not disturb on your phone, of course, and time management, speeding, right? Leave a little early, arrive a little late, just get there safely. Again, we want to drive down heartache on our Florida roadways.
Yeah, and you're in the video, part one of this, you talk about a specific cohort that Target Zero is spending a lot of its energy on, and that is males 18 to 24, correct?
That is
Um,
correct. Yep.
intuitively, I don't disagree with that. But what data did Target Zero find to focus in on this cohort?
So again, the Target Zero initiative was developing its marketing campaign through formative research, right? Including utilizing that crash data, human factor research, and focus group findings. So it became clear that the biggest offenders in the key behavior areas initiative aimed to change were males 18 to 24, like you just mentioned. Focus group findings also suggested that young male drivers valued admiration, control, confidence, humor, popularity. Campaign strategists utilize these values in their messaging development. For distracted driving, for example, data showed this age group was distracted by phones, apps, food, and music. For speeding, this age group noted they were rushing or running late, thrill seeking and multitasking, feeling stressed or anxious, and or less care for their own safety. So if they have less care for their own safety, they're not going to care about the people around them that they don't even know, like unintentionally. So all these findings went into crafting the education and the outreach and messaging that would appeal to and address these feelings, emotions, values, and behaviors for young males ages 18 to 24. Because again, at the end of the day, when they're behind the wheel, it's not really about let's get in our vehicle and let's drive, let's get from point A to B safely. It's the emotion that they're carrying that is taking place out on those roadways, and they're unintentionally seriously injuring and killing other people and themselves.
That cohort is well, I don't mean to have a pun, is the target. But I think that wouldn't the messaging and targeting go across all cohorts, correct?
100%. Yeah. These campaigns are for everybody. But when you want to target the group that's causing the most serious injury and crashes, that is that 18 to 24 that they learn through these focus groups. But yes, you are absolutely right. This is for every single one of us every day should get in our vehicles and just drive. We should, if we're a pedestrian, we need to be using our crosswalks. We need to make sure that we are clear. We make eye contact with our drivers of our vehicles to make sure that, we know where we're crossing and when we're crossing. Bicyclists in Florida are motorists. They need to make sure that they're doing what they need to do. We all need to take care of each other out on those roadways. We can't take anything for granted. So the Target Zero messaging literally is across the board for everyone.
Yeah, and I say that because, and I just thought about this coming into the office this morning, was in 2021, a 21-year-old young lady rear-ended me at a traffic light in Tallahassee.
Oh,
She jumped out of the car. I was parked listening to NPR because I'm old that way. And so I was completely stopped. She may have been going maybe 40 according to people around us. And she jumped out of the car and said she didn't have insurance, but admitted to the police, and it's in the report, that she was looking at her phone.
mhm.
So
Yeah,
um,
it is.
it's
It is dangerous and something like that. And those rear end crashes are bad too. I mean, they can mess you up physically for a very long time. Let alone the time it takes to like look down at your phone for a minute. That's what's happening. All these most of these rear end crashes are because people are just looking down at their phone. They don't realize, I mean, that it truly is. They say it, and I'm sure you've heard this so many times. Like by the time you look at your phone real quick, it's like the length of a football field.
That's right. That's what I
You
keep
know?
hearing.
Yeah. So it really is. So we really need to, we shouldn't be doing anything in our vehicles but driving, because out there today, it is just continuing we're continuing to climb in fatalities and serious injury because people are taking for granted that they're going to be okay, that they can look down for a minute and nothing's going to happen. But we as humans cannot multitask in our vehicles.
It's impossible. You cannot multitask anywhere.
Yeah, no, 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 no.
Um, so your presentation talks a lot about the focus on federal and state roads, and so counties own and maintain a large inventory of transportation system, i.e. roads. Can you talk about the role counties have or can play in Target Zero?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. So Target Zero aims to eliminate all traffic fatalities and serious injuries. So that's the one thing to understand. We're not saying that there won't ever be crashes, but we're aiming to eliminate those serious injuries and fatalities. And we can all advocate for safer roads and support the Target Zero initiative, whether we're an individual, a state employee, a county commissioner, or an engineer, as an example. But specifically, some examples that Florida counties can focus on is speed management, right? Enforcement, increase the law enforcement presence if we can. We are short on law enforcement in our state, but if we can, you can increase the law enforcement to deter speeding or implement automated enforcement. Automated enforcement is a really big part of the solution. It doesn't stand alone, just like law enforcement doesn't stand alone. It takes all of us working together. So if we can increase that law enforcement and add automated enforcement into our communities, it reduces the risk of these serious injuries and fatal crashes. Education, employ public awareness campaigns about the dangers of speeding. Education and awareness, public campaigns. I'm a huge fan. Target Zero media and community outreach to educate drivers on safe driving practices. I think the more that we can have campaigns to keep it in the public eye, the better that we are going to be. We have messaging, messaging, messaging. Enforcement, law enforcement initiative, collaborate with your local law enforcement to increase patrols and checkpoints in high-risk areas. Penalties. We need stricter penalties for speeding and other traffic violations. We've got to stop letting people just go. I mean, what happens is when people, the person that took my husband's life, they had previous violations, and their last offense was for running a red light and being ticketed for it. Well, now they come back and run a red light again, and take my brother's life and seriously injure my brother and leave my daughter without a dad. So we really have to increase those penalties. We have to let people know that it is not a right to drive. It is a privilege to drive, and we need to keep each other safe. Emergency response. So what can happen there is a quick response. We need to improve emergency response times to traffic crashes to reduce fatalities. Post-crash care, that we talk a lot about that. We have to enhance the care provided after crash to improve those survival rates. And then community involvement. Get your community involved. Have town meetings. Promote and support traffic safety initiatives. A lot of times our communities want to get involved, but they don't know how. A lot of times we implement automated enforcement and we don't let the communities understand this is for you. This is not to ticket you. This is not to hurt you. We want to help you get from point A to B safely. So if you engage your community in decisions with traffic safety, you're going to have a safer community, and you're going to have a community that feels like they can be a part of the solution at the end of the day. And they could also feel like they're being heard.
it seems to me like, and I don't know what the data shows, but that the cell phone distraction has got to be one of the highest at least within the past 10 or 15 years in terms of distracted driving. I will raise my hand and admit I have looked down at my phone driving. And um, what I heard some anecdotal data that it took about 30 years for seatbelts to be an acceptable, um, let me say, tool, a safety tool within the car for drivers to get in and buckle up. I mean, I remember as a kid in the 70s with my dad, we had the lap belts and we weren't buckled in. But
Mhm.
that's changed because I get in a car, I'll turn to my right, and my daughter's already buckled in. I'm like, oh, I better buckle in. So it'd be interesting to know over time whether that becomes a forced behavior just to put your phone down. I don't have a question here, but just your thoughts on something like that. Do you think that will happen um, in the future?
I think we have to make it happen. That's why I think we have to have these safety campaigns, and there's a push around the country for to be able to have better laws for cell phone use. Even right now, there'll be another bill going up to Tallahassee this next year because right now you have the law right now is if a law enforcement officer pulls you over, you have to give them the phone. You have to freely say, yes, I you know what, you're right, I was talking or I was texting. Most people aren't going to do that. They don't want to be held accountable. So we have a law, yes, in Florida, but it's a very flawed, weak law that doesn't help our law enforcement officers out and it doesn't help any of us out. Again, we have to be reminded that we are making dangerous driving decisions. And as human beings, we have to make sure somebody has to say to us most of the time, you cannot talk on your phone while you are in your vehicle. You cannot look on it, you cannot text, you cannot drive. We are raising kids now. I see babies in grocery carts with a phone in their face. And so what happens at that point is that we are teaching them to look at their phones. We're not teaching them to look at other people. We're not teaching them how to drive. We're teaching them exactly what it is to look down at their phones. And so they're already have these risky driving behaviors before they're even going to get behind the wheel. So yes, we have to. That's why we have to have those stricter laws for distracted driving. Because we could do a lot out there. We could save a lot of lives if we could take these phones out of our vehicles.
Can you remind me what does the law say today about cell phones and driving? Can you talk? Can you text? Um, just remind me of what laws have
Yeah,
passed.
I don't, so just so you know, I don't know specifics. But I do know that yes, you can talk as long as you have your hands free, right? But you're not supposed to text. You're not supposed to text. If you are texting, a law enforcement officer can pull you over, but unless you admit to using your cell phone, you will not be ticketed because you have to be able to hand the phone over to a law enforcement officer for them to look at it and say, yes, they were driving, they were texting and driving. So it's a very flawed law.
Yeah. Let me move into another topic that was in your video. You talked about target zero, and there's 5 priority districts with the target counties within those districts. And you just talking about how those districts were selected and why?
Absolutely. So the 5 priority districts in target counties were identified through a comprehensive analysis, which combines crash data results, extensive research, and feedback from, again, the focus groups. The focus groups has been great all through Target Zero. The information was mapped across Florida, highlighting the areas of the highest concentration of fatal or significant injury crashes in those targeted communities. This illustrated where most of the education and driver behavior change needs to take place.
I wonder if they're correlating with just the population size of those areas. I know I'm not going to mention the counties here, but I wonder if that is a part of it because I can't recall whether they included some of the small rural counties, which does not mean they don't have similar um, driving issues and behavioral issues in those areas. But
Yes, so it is some of the bigger air, it is some of the population, of course, but it is some of the smaller ones too. I mean, District 1, 4, 5, 6, and 7 were all our high priority districts that were having the most serious injury and fatal crashes. So, and then not only go to the counties, but then they go down into those cities and showcase, as an example, with District 1 where I live, it's Polk, Manatee, and Sarasota counties that we concentrate on because they have the most fatal and serious injury.
um, just to kind of wrap this up, it seems to me if you're going to get a message out to at least the initial target cohort, that it would take a lot of messaging and a lot of money to message out to them. Do you have a sense for funding, whether it's state or the federal level on, because there's commercials that I've seen. You talked about you look down for a couple seconds, you've passed, a football field. During basketball season, I've heard they'll say, okay, you look down for a second or 2 seconds and you've gone around the basketball court 3 times or something, some analogy like that. But it
Yeah.
seems to me the more messaging like that to an 18 to 24-year-old male or female is at some point going to sink in. But that takes money, whether it's through radio, social media, which is what they're all over, and not just television. So, do you have a sense for funding out there?
Yeah, and that's the great thing, and that's why Target Zero is, that's why they were able to start Target Zero. So there's federal funding, NHTSA has funding, Federal Highway has funding, and now we have with the infrastructure law, there are certain fundings in there for infrastructure, advertising, campaigns, and a lot of cities and counties in the state in Florida are able to utilize those funds and are learning how to apply for those grants and get those grants. So yes, there is funding, which for the first time, that this last 4 years with traffic safety, there has been some funding, especially in the last 2 years. And we hope that that trend continues federally because it's really helping a lot of communities around the country, but it is helping us here in Florida to continue that messaging because as I had said earlier, you have to keep it in the eye. You can't have Target Zero today and then we're gone next year. And the Florida Department of Transportation doesn't feel that way either. They want to keep making their campaigns stronger and bigger, and they want to keep putting those messaging on those football games, the baseball games, any way that they can get those, not only those 18 to 24-year-olds, but every single one of us to be able to hear what we need to hear out there to remind us to slow down, be safe, get behind the wheel and just drive. If you're going to walk appropriately. If you're going to be on a bicycle, then make sure you stay safe on a bicycle. But the different organizations in the state of Florida with the Florida Department of Transportation, there are funding opportunities to help with these campaigns.
Awesome. Melissa, thank you for coming on today. Thank you for the work that you do. Like I mentioned to you offline, is I've seen you. We've never met before, but I've seen you at the Capitol for years and years. I was one of the persons who would occasionally testify at the podium on the red light cameras, but mainly just saw you in the audience and was really admired you for your courage and your passion. And as a parent with two young children, I quietly hold my breath every time they get in a car. And so I think the work that you do and the work that Target Zero does will really help improve things over time. So I want to thank you for coming on and uh, turn it over to you. Do you have any final words before we turn it off?
Yes, thank you so much, number one, for having me. I could utilize my voice all day long, which I've been doing for the last 20 years because I don't want people to walk in my shoes. I want people to have the opportunity to go back home at the end of the day. I want your kids to be safe. I want all people to be safe and to recognize what's happening on our roadways. We can prevent these tragedies, and it's really important that we do the best that we can every day to make our roads safer. And I appreciate you and your commitment to, getting our messaging out for Target Zero, because it is an important campaign that's not going to go away. And we want to bring everybody in every day, to drive down that heartache on our roadways. And one thing that I could say, if I could really tell people, you know what, the way we drive as adults, as parents, our children, when we bring them home from the hospital and we put them in the back seat of our vehicles, they're going to start. That's when the education starts. They're going to start mirroring as they get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old. As they grow, they're going to see how you drive, and they're going to drive the way that you drive. So don't say, do as I do, don't do as I do, do as I say. Don't do that. We're putting our own children at risk when we don't make good decisions in our vehicles, and we're putting other children at risk when we don't put other people in our vehicles. We need to give our kids a chance to look up, not look at their devices. They need to look up. They need to make eye contact with people, because when it comes to driving, we're at 15 years old. We are turning over vehicles to our kids, and they already know. They've already seen us drive, how we're doing and what we're doing. We need them to be safe, because more than anything, we need our kids to come home at the end of the day after being in vehicles. So um, I just urge parents to really, truly slow down, don't speed, don't do aggressive driving, don't be distracted. Do the best that you can every day in your vehicle to protect your loved ones, so that we can get to zero serious injury and zero fatalities on our roadways.
It's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you so much.